Welcome. I'm Ben Lucas.
And I'm Stuart Marlandis.
And this is the Photo Op Podcast, where we give our opinions on all things photo and video.
That is true.
That is true. So, if you're new to the podcast, this is season 2. We are coming back from a little break. We just finished our 100th episode. Actually,
3 digits already.
3 digits. Last week, we came back from the break with episode 1-on-1, a little bit of news. Go check that one out if you're wondering about Adobe and Pantone. But we're going to start off with a listener question, and this listener question is going to kick off the whole episode today, I think. We're probably just going to do that. So today's the listener question. Izzy asked, thank you for the question. I like shooting at noon on bright sunny days. I enjoy the challenge. What photography rules do you break intentionally or disagree with?
Well, they're more like guidelines than actual rules.
Ah, yes. The Captain Barbosa of rules. Okay, so one thing that I will say about photography rules is if you're new, follow the rules.
Yeah.
Like it's not the rules are meant to be broken type thing, but it is the rules because there's something right about them. They're aesthetically pleasing, they're flattering, they're whatever the rule is. And when you break that rule intentionally because you're choosing to, and not that you're breaking the rule because you didn't know it was a rule, then it's okay. If you don't know the rule and you break the rule, you need to get better at photography.
Yeah, I think you see this occasionally where there are new photographers and they, through lack of experience, they break a rule and it turns out, they get lucky and it turns out to look really good. And they're like, oh, look at how good I am. I broke this rule even though I'm a beginner and everything's great. And it's like, yeah, but everybody gets lucky. We've even talked about this before. Like,
it's
you may have gotten lucky that time, but that's not the point.
It's kind of like when people are like, "Oh, I'm a natural light shooter." That doesn't make you better than anyone else. I am also an available light shooter, which means I will use any fucking light I have available.
I love bright lights. I mean, I'm a flashaholic. Like, I've got the big bright flashlights in my pocket. Like, photo and video lights are like the brightest possible flashlights in my opinion.
Although
so
you mostly use continuous though.
I do, but it's because I just like lighting technology. So for me, I'm like, I'll use the lights because they're cool. I don't even care what the result is.
and to me, like, a pop of white is a pop of white. I don't really care where it comes from as long as it gets the result I want. Which I think we have a question in the pipeline that we'll talk about next week. We'll dive in more on that. But let's go back to Izzy's question.
Yes.
Rules. So I hate shooting at noon on bright sunny days. That is a rule that I 100% agree with because it looks bad. It gives you raccoon eyes. Like, yeah, there are ways that you can stylistically play with it, but there is this book. Oh man, I don't remember. I remember it was Lindsay Adler and Eric. I forget his last name. I apologize, super famous
Lindsay
LA photographer. But it is called Shooting in Light. There's going to be a lot of censorship apparently on this episode. Anyway, that is the actual name of their book. And I looked at that book, and essentially what it says is get them out of the noon sun. Whether you are putting them in the shade or under open shade or next to a building or under a tree, just get them out of it. Or use a diffuser. And their rule, and like, it's that, and then add in your own flash. Like, basically their rule is this light is terrible. There you go. The only other thing that you can do is I remember Lindsay had this one particular pose where she just has the model looking straight up into the sun. So they get kind of a hard butterfly Rembrandt lighting, but coming from like straight up. And
they're trying desperately not to squint.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, that's a fashion editorial choice. But in general, it looks bad. I hate it. So good for you that you enjoy that. I don't.
You're hardcore.
Yeah,
why do you punish yourself like that?
But some rules that we like to break or disagree with.
Yes.
I'm gonna start with rule of thirds.
Ooh, rule of thirds.
So it's not that I necessarily disagree with the rule, and I very often use it. Like, seriously, look at this Iceland picture behind his head. It is a perfect rule of thirds. Top, bottom. Me and my wife are top, bottom in a third, and left, right in a third, just slightly offset, so I wouldn't be in the crease of one of those triptych panels. But Yeah, so rule of thirds looks good for a reason,
Mm-hmm,
but I also really like shooting like perfect symmetry rather than
Yeah, so I noticed. So I use rule of thirds a lot, basically as a crutch because I don't want to think about it and I just want it to look sort of good and competent by default. So I will very frequently use the rule of thirds. But I found something funny. So when we got this listener question, I was kind of looking at what's out there nowadays. What are people talking about as far as photography composition rules are concerned? And you see these together so frequently where they're like rule of thirds and then but symmetry is cool. I'm like, but they're not. Those are conflicting things.
Rule of
They're
thirds
mutually
is
exclusive.
asymmetrical, yeah.
So you're immediately. So a new photographer, I'd feel like you'd be confused. You look at that and say, well, they say do use rule of thirds, but then they say use symmetry, and what do I do? Like I'm breaking one rule by using the other rule. So
I will say I subconsciously use it of like when you shoot a headshot of somebody, the perfect spot for their eye is the top 1/3 line.
Oh, yeah.
So there's just that. Like that is how you frame a headshot.
Yeah.
And when I say like I do like symmetry, it especially comes down to when you have something that has a lot of negative space, there's just a very different feeling doing a symmetrical thing versus a rule of thirds thing. And sometimes, because there's different feelings, like sometimes you want one versus the other, but I like going, if it's slightly off, then it looks like a mistake. So that's why I love going like the Wes Anderson perfectly symmetrical,
you either need to, you can't be slightly off. You either need to commit to the rule of thirds or you need to break it entirely.
Yes, that is very true. That is very true.
Yep. I've done that so many times where I shoot it and like I start editing and I'm like, oh, it's just slightly off. Like, I'll see what I can crop.
Yeah, and I don't get too finicky about that. It's does this visually look uneasy?
Yeah.
And if it looks uneasy, what about it? Is my perspective kind of like kerning a certain direction, or am I, having a rotated horizon, or like there might be something like that. And yeah,
I guess if you're going for an uneasy feel, then sure. But
yeah.
The horizon thing, I never break that. That is a rule. My horizons, like I try to make them as perfectly level as possible. I hate an unlevel horizon.
It is really rough though when it's off, but you don't have a reference for like if you're outside in the woods.
Yep. That is tricky.
Like you don't necessarily have a horizon to look at or a reference. Or if you're in a building that has like a weird slanted ceiling just on one side or something, and you're like everything looks wrong, but like it is technically like there's. Yeah,
it's difficult.
it's difficult sometimes, but yeah, rule of thirds. Once you learn it and get it ingrained in your brain, you stop thinking about it, and I like breaking that rule.
Yeah. Then it's just a tool that you can ignore if you so choose.
I've talked about that for far too long. So what are one of the rules?
My first rule is that I break is instead of exposing things properly, I underexpose almost everything. I would guess say expose for the highlights, but yeah. I'm going to refer to this as just Sony things to throw out an old Tumblr meme.
I think expose for the highlights is a rule. So that's not even a rule that you're breaking.
Well,
see, when you're shooting film, you expose for the shadows, but when you're shooting digital, you expose for the highlights.
Yeah, I suppose.
So that's not even a rule that you're breaking.
Well,
you goody two shoes trying to break a rule, and you are just following a different rule.
But I probably underexpose more than even that. Like I will underexpose past the point where the highlights are retained solidly because I can get away with it
because you shoot Sony.
Just Sony things.
Yeah. I have to. I have to get proper exposure.
The amount of information that you can recall from a good sensor in the shadows is just insane, and I'm like, I'll lean into that. I'll be lazy.
You're lazy / playing
yes.
it ridiculously safe to the point where you put yourself in bubble wrap before you leave the house. I think that's
pretty much.
Yeah,
that's how I expose the scene.
I think that sounds about right.
Bubble wrap exposure.
Kind of on that. One of the rules for shooting handheld is your slowest shutter speed should be 1 over your focal length. So if you are shooting a 50 mil, you should not go shorter than 1/50th of a second. If you're shooting a 70-200 completely zoomed in, your shutter speed should not be less than 1/200th of a second. With camera stabilization and just me knowing kind of how much I can get away with of like proper, pose holding, I ignore that entirely. Yeah.
I mean, the only shutter speed I care about is having twice my frames per second. So I guess for me, I'm always stuck.
That's true. You get stuck. Well, so I mean, like, especially when I'm shooting like a ring shot. So I always shoot ring shots with my 100 mil macro. So you would think you're like, okay, so 1/100th of a second, but I'm always shooting it in a really dark reception. Not always, but most of the time. And like I can bring my own lighting, but I also don't want it to look nuclear. And if I'm trying to like mix ambient with like a candle or something else that, the ambiance of the room, I don't want to just nuke the rest of the room black by adding in my own flash and trying to balance it. And something that small, also holding it awkwardly. So generally what I do is like I'll set it even all the way up to like a 40th or a 50th of a second. So that way I can keep my ISO nice and low. And like when I get a sharp shot, it'll be really nice. And then what I do is I just motor drive the same shot and then what'll happen is of those 4 or 5 that I shot, there's going to be one in the middle that's absolutely tack sharp. I ditch the rest and move on with my day.
Or you could get a new camera and have a sensor that you can push the ISO up and it doesn't matter.
Or screw you.
Just Sony things.
Hashtag just Sony things. I mean, I do appreciate that. Like, I push probably farther than I should, and especially, it starts getting a little grainy, a little fuzzy when I hit about 6400. I try not to push too high past that. After that, you're starting to look like an art film.
I mean, that's not the worst thing in the world. Like, people worry too much about, I think, conversely, although I am a fan of Sony sensors, conversely, I feel like people get too worried about, like, it needs to be pristine. Like, there needs to be no noise. It needs to be perfect in every way. And
I do not care about that at all, going all the way up to like 3200.
Yeah.
Like, I would never shoot a headshot at 3200.
Oh, no. I'm not saying like...
For like a wedding and I'm out in the field,
Oh, there are limits. There are limits. But there are also, I feel like, limits on how much I care. Like, if it's a little bit noisy, but it still looks good. It still looks good. Who cares?
That's true. Great. I'm okay with it until you start getting the little colored dots noise.
That's not good.
Or until reducing the noise would destroy the detail.
Yeah.
So when it starts looking like a cartoon, because
well, when people like add in noise, like people add like fake film.
If you
grains.
do that, I hate you. Do not add in fake noise.
Get a worse sensor and shoot it for real.
You hipster. No.
Buy a digital camera from 25 years ago and do it for real.
No.
If you're a real hipster.
No. I hate it so much. Can you tell that I never shot film? Hashtag I did shoot film and I hated every minute of it. Yeah.
Speaking of hipsters,
digital for life. Yeah.
Hipsters really like prime lenses.
Yeah, they do.
So do professional photographers a lot of the time, actually. Like it's a very common thing that you'll see online, on YouTube, everywhere. People, they pick their prime or set of primes and they're like, I only shoot primes. I only shoot these 3 primes. And if you shoot a zoom lens, you're inferior. You should only shoot prime lenses, and they're, in their opinion, they're superior for all these different ways. And I get the technical superiority in some respects. You're not going to find a zoom lens that is under f1.
Okay, there's that.
Yeah.
But most people complain about sharpness. That's not even a thing anymore.
Okay, yeah. Prime lenses are not substantially or even at all sharper than zoom lenses now. And guess what? When I want to change my focal length, all I need to do is this, and you have to change your lens out or have 2 camera bodies, and I can just keep shooting that entire time. So although people will tell you, especially early on, get prime lenses. Like if you're going to invest in lenses, get a prime lens because that's the best quality. Who cares? A good, like, let's say middle to upper middle quality zoom lens, like Tamron's like f/28 line, are really good and often outcompete any other lenses, prime or otherwise, from the primary camera manufacturer or not. I will shoot zoom lenses, and yes, I am lazy. I don't want to shoot a bunch of different lenses. I'd like to have like 3 lenses. Ideally, I'd like to have one super zoom lens that goes from like like or not F, goes from like 10 millimeters to 400 millimeters. I would love that, but the quality isn't quite there yet. We'll get there soon. Tamron made a suite like 40 to 400 recently that the quality is actually pretty darn good for how cheap and how big of a range that is.
So I used to shoot weddings with 7200, 2050, 85.
Sweet.
Of just like, boom, that was it. And people were like, well, what about, oh, okay, and then my 100 mil macro for the ring shot, but we're not even, that's a
there are special
niche
cases.
case.
There are
That's a special niche case.
There's special cases.
But when people are like, okay, but what about this? And I'm just thinking of like, okay, well, generally, I love zooming in and getting the detail anyway, and especially like when I'm at the back of a reception, like my 70 is my wide, and then I zoom into my 200 and get my close. Like that is, and then I know a lot of photographers that use, 24-70, and I had one of those in my bag, and I just hated it and never used it. But it's funny because I recently replaced it with a new 24-70, and for one reason or another, I find myself not using the 20 anymore, not using the 50 anymore, not using the 85.
It'll get you.
And I'm just like, oh, this
is
is super convenient. Well, there was one wedding where it was like 200 degrees out, and I didn't want to lug like a million things. There's another wedding that I had to travel a bajillion miles, and I was trying to pack my bag light. There was your wedding was on the beach, and I didn't want to be changing out lenses and having sand whipping up into it.
Nope.
I did another wedding 3 weeks ago where it was pouring down rain, and like I have my camera in a protector, so I brought two bodies, 24-70 on one, 7200 on the other.
Covers everything.
So yeah, there's a lot of safety reasons that I was just like, I don't feel like switching out lenses, but also like, yeah, the quality's, I mean, when you shoot at f1, like if you hit their nose instead of their eye, that photo is useless.
Yep.
And so I'm generally shooting most of my photos at like f3.2 anyway.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a solid zoom lens that does f2.8 or so through the entire range,
and even that I'm stopping down because
that's a little bit too much sometimes.
Yeah, because it's 2.8. It's a little much sometimes.
Yeah. People chase the ultimate range of different things. They chase the ultimate, like, well, could I get an f 0.95 or 0.9? You can only get those in primes. Like, I get it. That's cool. You can do the Kubrick thing and shoot a scene by like one candle or whatever he did. Like, I get it. I get chasing the extremes. I like to chase the extremes. But as a working tool,
yes,
zoom lenses are good.
I love my 20, especially for travel. I love my 85, especially for headshots. The 50 doesn't see that much use anymore, but when the 85 is just too zoomed in, and like I'm caught in a small room and like I need to blur because the background's messy, of like, yeah, it does the trick in a pinch.
Yeah.
But yeah, a good zoom lens in your bag is handy. I feel like with beginner photographers, because they don't know the composition that they're looking for, a zoom lens is a crutch. So there is that, like, because if you're always shooting at 35 when you should be shooting at 50, 60, 70, of just like most of the photos that I see that are bad, they're bad because they're too wide.
I guess. I guess that it could pose a problem early on, but I'm also somebody who's like, I don't want you to buy things multiple times and be like, wow, I really regretted buying X thing because I should have bought Y thing instead because I'm going to use that.
You know what I regret buying? My 35. Yeah. I've used it like twice.
So I have a 35 prime, or had a 35 prime and a 50 prime. Well, now I have like 350 primes, but I used my 35.
Are any of them Canon? Can I?
No.
Oh, dang.
They're all...
I was going to say I probably need a second 50.
No, they're all like...
Long story.
They're all like Minolta and random, and like Helios and random stuff like that. But I should say, like, the only primes that I use at this point are very infrequent, and two, they're like, ooh, this Minolta glass from like the 70s is cool. I'm going to use that. Like,
that's true.
It's just for screwing around, basically. So I get it, but I feel like if you're trying to build a working kit, like a wide zoom, a medium zoom, and a tele zoom is pretty much will cover everything you want to do. I mean, it's called the Holy Trinity for a reason.
That is true. Yeah. That is true. But so a lot of beginner photographers, their photos are bad because I think they shoot too wide.
Yes.
So the next rule that I like breaking is I shoot too wide.
So do I. This is one we immediately agreed on. We didn't look at each other's stuff.
We did not look at each other's list before we started recording.
Yeah, we dumped both of our ideas in, and we're like, wait a minute, why is our third one shooting too wide?
So I guess you only have 5 because we were doing 3 each and we agree on this one. So it really depends. There are definitely times where I like to crop in camera. When I'm shooting a wedding, oh my God, I try to crop in camera as much as possible. But there are also times, especially when I do a lot of advertising type stuff, where I try and shoot it wide because I don't know what they're doing. I don't know how they're going to crop it. I recently started shooting youth sports photos, and in my brain I still have not gotten a grasp of exactly kind of where that 8x10 crop is. So I'm like, I just got to shoot wide because when the kid does something weird with their arm holding the basketball, like I want to make sure that they don't look like just 2 long arms and no basketball when that gets cropped.
This is a really common thing in video too, like shooting slightly wide, both to give you room to crop, but also because depending on your subject matter, you don't know what's going to happen necessarily. And if they move suddenly, you've got a little bit more space to capture them. So yeah, I shoot wide. I like shooting wide. I like compositionally shooting wide. I shoot wide all the time.
I love zooming in and getting the details, and I'm generally not one of those people that are like, oh yeah, I'm going to shoot wide for safety and crop everything later because I like getting it right the first time. But there are definitely times where I make the conscious decision of just like, I don't know what's going to happen with this. I don't know if it's going to be crop funny. I don't know if it's going to be put on a magazine. And actually, this happened. I did a shoot for Vogue magazine. Yay!
Fancy.
I don't know if you have an applause thing on there. Yay!
Oh, I do, but it's not.
Whatever.
Yeah.
So I did a thing for Vogue magazine, and I had to shoot wide because they didn't tell me where in the magazine article it was going, if it was going to be full page or cropped or something.
Come on, Vogue. You can communicate that stuff ahead of time.
So I had to give them. It was a little bit last minute, but yeah. So I had to shoot wide and give them the thing, and then when it even got posted, they posted to their, I think, Instagram or TikTok, and then they also posted just like the photo, and so the some of the important parts of the photo got cropped out because even then I shot too tight. So that's just one of those examples of like, I don't know how it's going to get used and I want to make sure the important parts are in there. But, you know, it is what it is at the end of the day.
Shooting wide is the exposing for the highlights of the
composition.
Yeah.
I guess the downside to that would be if you're doing something that requires depth of field, but even then, so actually, if you go to my Instagram, I'll post a link to the Instagram post. You know, we'll do that in the show notes. So if you go check out this photo that I shot for Vogue, even this, so he just had this cool kind of like mirror on his wall, and I was like, hey, if I line his head up with that mirror, it kind of looks like a saint halo.
Cool.
But I couldn't shoot wide open or that mirror got obliterated and you didn't know it was there. So even then, I think I shot that at like f6 or something. So shooting wide of like, I'm not exactly going for depth of field.
No.
I want the background to be a little blurry so it separates from him, but I don't want it to be, you know, your F1.2.
Not tremendously blurry.
Yeah. So there you go. Those are some rules that we enjoy breaking.
Yeah, I relish breaking the photography rules.
I just don't really think about it all that much, but I guess they're so ingrained in my brain that when I'm breaking the rule, I know I'm breaking it for a reason, which, Ben,
that's the correct way to think about it, is break the rules for a reason. Yeah, I just like being contrarian, I guess.
You do. It's true. So, Izzy, thank you so much for the question. Next time, we are going to talk about lighting. And
sure.
we had a quick little discussion on another listener question that came in. We had a 10-second discussion on this, immediately disagreed and went, nope, stop talking. We got to get this one on air.
So join us next time for a lighting fight. Not really.
Light fight.
Light fight.
Ooh, that's a good title. Light Fight. Join us next time for Light Fight.
You were here.
On the
you
Photo
heard
Op
it
podcast.
Live. Light Fight.
Tuesday. Light Fight. If you have questions or ideas for future episodes, you can email us at hello@photo-op.show.
Watch us on Ben's YouTube channel at Non-Creative.
As in Om Nom Nom.
Share this with a friend, and you can listen to Photo Op anywhere podcasts are sold.
Or download it. Welcome. This is the Photo Up podcast. Photo Up podcast.
Try that again.
We're gonna try that one more time.